no, when he ordered the lifeboats cleared, ready, there was no reason to suspect the ship was going to sink. When he ordered an evacuation, Titanic was not in a foundering condition. He started putting people into lifeboats and lowering them to the sea, and his ship was not yet foundering. And he would have known that. Now, I'd love to be, the one question I'd love to ask old E.J. Smith is why? Did he have a premonition? You know, what motivated him? As I've rescued 9 people, and I'll tell you, each one of the three rescues, 9 people. It's 4 at a time for years. But each time I'd get this feeling there's something's wrong, and I would look to where, I don't know why, I'd look to where I would see a boat capsize or something, and then go rescue the people. I don't understand, well, I think I understand it, but I can't give you a scientific answer. I can't tell you why, when I was coming into Put in Bay one day and 2 girls on a jet ski came up the starboard side, and they went zooming past where I could see them, I crashed back without knowing that they were going to turn left in front of the boat, until I heard the passengers cheering that we had missed them. I never saw it. Why did I do it? I don't know. Something told me to. But I don't, you know, you can have whatever reasons you want for those things. I don't want to get into that as much as Smith did evacuate his vessel before it was foundering. What I believe is true, Titanic would have floated well past when Carpathia arrived. Now let's go one final myth, and that was there are too few lifeboats. What is the purpose of a lifeboat? In 1912, and today, it's only to ferry passengers from the sinking ship to the rescue vessel.
Right.
It's the only purpose. Okay, in 1912, it had to be an open boat because the only thing you could move it was Swedish steam. Boom, pull, you know what Swedish steam is? Muscles. Okay? The Swedes were big and dumb. You know, that's what the joke was about. Okay. That's why they were open boats. The whole concept was that the boats were not to save lives, they were to transfer people. The rescue ship was going to save the lives. How many sailors were on Titanic? How big was the crew? Actual sailing crew?
200 and something.
48.
Oh, wow.
48
48 total?
sailors. Everybody else was victualling or housekeeping or hotel staff or engineering staff. There were only 48 decades, if you will. Decades. 48. Why 48? 16 boats. Each boat takes 2 people. Because when you lower it, they have to release it at the same time, or the boat, if the waves are moving, will tip over. So that's 2 guys, and one then becomes the coxswain, and the other is kind of like, he does everything else. And then you put the stokers in. Why? Because they had biceps. They rowed. And that's why the stokers are in the boat. And then the passengers fit where they can. The whole concept then is that the lifeboat isn't to save lives, it's to transfer you to a ship that can save your life. So we have 16 lifeboats. How many crew do we need? 32 for the boats. Okay, we have 2 sections of boats. It takes 2 men at the bow and 2 men at the stern on the falls to lower a boat. 2, 4, 6, 8. What do we have? 30. We start, you see how the numbers are working out. The numbers of men needed to lower the lifeboats and man the lifeboats matched the number of deck seamen in the crew. And the boats weren't meant to save lives. It was the rescue ship that was going to save the lives. The boats were to transport them. Even today, we know that lifeboats don't work. But the whole idea of 1 seat for everybody was born in the Robert La Follette movement of progressivism, that the idea was everybody should have a seat. It wasn't based in science or anything like that. Here on the Great Lakes, he forced them to put lifeboats on for everybody on the Eastland over in Chicago, a ship that was known to be unsteady. Probably should not have been in service, but nonetheless, they put 835 people on it for a company picnic. It rolled over while tied up in the river and killed them. And part of the reason was lifeboats for everyone. Because when you damage the stability of a ship, you're putting every life in danger. The other thing is some of us look old enough to remember the Andrea Doria Stockholm collision. The Andrea Doria was struck on the starboard side, and she rolled over. In this position, the lower boats were fine. The upper boats were useless. Guess what? They went down with the ship. It meant that the people on the Andrea Doria, there was one lifeboat seat for everybody on the ship. So what? They couldn't launch the boats they had. If you go up, look at the pictures, you'll have them somewhere in this library. You'll have a picture of the ship rolling over and sinking and the lifeboats bobbing off the deck. Because that's all that they could do. They couldn't launch them. So, my point is that Titanic didn't have too few boats. Well, let's look at another thing. In the time between when they started lowering the boats and the time the ship sank, they got the 16 regular boats and 2 of the collapsible boats up here off right. If they had had more lifeboats, would they have had more time? No. So what would have happened to the extra boats? Yeah, I mean, so it's just, now you really want to go home. Have anybody here planning a cruise? You planning a cruise? Huh?
No.
Okay. I don't want to ruin it for you, but first thing they'll do is they'll have a lifeboat drill, but you will not go to the lifeboat. You will go to your embarkation station.
Right.
The reason you go to your embarkation station is they know damn well that because boats are long and narrow and damage causes them to list, that probably half the people won't have a viable lifeboat, a usable lifeboat. So you go to your embarkation station and they reassure you, make sure your life jacket's on, oh, they're taking care of you. And they're not telling you that by the luck of the draw, because you have a portside boat and the ship is listing to starboard, that you have been elected to reenact the Titanic's last moments. Now I want you to think about something else. So you get in, you're in a lucky one. You get in that orange lobster pod, okay, all enclosed. They lower you down to the sea and you're doing this. Now, you know how bad people smell just regular? All right, okay, and you're in there, cramped in there, you know, and people are starting to upchuck, and then the little ones and then the bigger ones have to do what comes naturally, number 1 and number 2. Can you imagine what it's going to be like in there? Okay, now there is only one class of vessel that can rescue you. You can't be rescued by an ordinary ship because they have no way to get you out of the water. I mean, they can wave at you. You know, I'll stand by. You can get in the lee of my tanker, but I can't do anything. I mean, I'll throw you a rope. I mean, that's all I can do. How are they going to get you out of the water? I mean, it's too dangerous to. You got to put over a Jacob's ladder and have old women and, you know, I mean, no, it ain't going to happen. If I'm the captain of the rescue ship, I'll throw a line to you. You're safe where you are. If I put you on the Jacob's ladder and you fall off, I got a lawsuit. So the only thing you can do is send in the Marines. Literally, the Marines are the only vessels. They're landing ships that have the back door opens and they have that's the only, they don't keep them stationed in the Caribbean and other places. They keep them stationed where danger is. So it could be a couple days while you're out there. Oh, man. I think I'd choose to stay on the sinking ship. It's going to be bad, yeah. But in 1748, 548, Titanic time, and takes it through, and I can prove here the first course change, the one that was made 30 minutes before the accident. I can show you here. It's done off of the actual navigational data from the ship. There's no argument with it. But I'll show this to anybody that wants to try and go home scratching their head and, yeah, I mean, you know, I didn't want to bring this up. Now, questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the movie, and I know Hollywood, history according to Hollywood is not always history. It's Hollywood. So Titanic is steaming along and everybody's screaming and yelling, the bell's ringing, and somebody gives hard to starboard in the movie.
Mhm.
So I was doing some reading and they said that Titanic had a tiller rudder. So if you spun the wheel to the right, the bow goes to the left.
Not exactly right, but very close. They gave helm orders, not wheel orders. Okay, all of you drive cars. When you turn the wheel to the right, what do you mean? You mean you turn the top of the wheel to the right.
Correct.
In those days, the quartermaster learned to turn the bottom of the wheel. So if you steer with the bottom of the wheel, to go right, you're going to steer to the left. So when you issued an order, you said, if you said hard a starboard, that meant put the tiller, and there was a tiller, but not what you would think of. It's a quadrant, but put it to the right. Now, if the tiller goes to the right, the rudder goes to the left, the ship goes left.
Correct.
It was so confusing, there were collisions during World War I because they drafted a lot of people into the British Navy, American Navy, and they said, whoa, wait a minute, these are hayfoot strawfoots, and they don't, I mean, now, you know. So, yeah, that's why. Hitchens didn't make a mistake, though. Yeah.
I was watching a show on the Smithsonian Channel called Titanic's Final Mystery, and they said that on the night of the collision on April 14th, there was some like optical effects
Oh, they stole that from
California,
and they got it all wrong. There would have been definitely some optical effects, but it had nothing to do with California. It had to do with seeing the ice. And people have got it all wrong. Californian did exactly right. You got to understand, that the Captain Lord of the Californian, his ship floated. Captain Smith sank. So we can't blame your first job is to your ship and to your crew. If I see you in the water and I know that I am your only hope, but in trying to rescue you, I put my ship and its crew and its passengers in danger, that's a criminal offense. I have no right, if you're on my crew, to take a risk with your life. Period. Nothing overrides that. Captain Lord of the Californian did everything by the book. The British inquiry wanted to pin the deaths of people on somebody, and that's how they did it. They didn't want to admit that it was, frankly, a lot bigger story. They wanted to have it real simple, and politicians love scapegoats. Yeah.
The safety things did not go all the way to the ceiling. Is that part accurate? The
Bulkheads?
the watertight things, or I've read in a
All right.
number of things, they didn't go all the way to the top.
They didn't. Still don't. You see, Titanic was depending on where the damage was, it was up to a 4-compartment ship. Typically, a freighter is at best a 2-compartment ship. That is, or I'm sorry, 1-compartment ship. With 1 compartment hold, it will not sink. But it will usually be the engine room. The holds, if they get water in the holds, they will typically sink. Great Lakes freighters, for years, they weren't even a 1-compartment ship. Look at the Daniel Morel. Has anybody ever met the guy who survived that?
He spoke here.
Yeah, I mean, when the ship went bang and cracked in half, there was no way to keep anything up. Not even his spirits. I mean, that was a scary thing. So the bulkhead thing, the ice cube tray theory, was an invention of the press more than anything, based on the lie that Titanic was fatally wounded. Remember, it wasn't, and that water wouldn't have come over the bulkheads. I haven't gone into why a lot of this happened, but no. By the way, this is the way I do my research. I want to know if they could tell what time it was in the lifeboats. So Wally's best, Wally World, and they took it out in the lake with no lights on. So I knew that anybody who said what time the ship sank who didn't have access to a lamp didn't know what they were talking about. That's why it's here. I mean, I love doing stuff like, yeah, another question?
Yeah, I watched several of these Titanic's Last Moments and everything, and they were talking about searching for the double bottom.
Oh, that was the documentaries I worked on.
Is that the one you worked on?
Two of them, yeah. Titanic Missing Pieces and Titanic Achilles Heel.
Yeah, so double bottom theory and everything, what did that finally prove?
Well, my view, it proved that the company that produced the documentary ran out of time before they ran out of research. I don't think they did well at all with it. I disagreed with them at that point. I said, we don't have the answer that we went out for, but you found something more important, but I never got there.
Okay.
What happened was, everybody looks at the side of the ship to look at the breakup. You can't do that. Didn't break up top, bottom, bottom up. That's the big argument. It broke up, you gotta look at it longitudinally. If you look at it longitudinally in this way, you'll see you have upper decks and lower decks, and these sides here are thin. This is an I-beam, a double I-beam, if you will. What happens is, as the stern is lifting, it's causing the ship to bend. There's a expansion joint right in here that is a hard point. So the radius of the bend changes. That's a stress riser, and that creates even more problem. But Titanic, actually, when we did the studies, Titanic sustained a greater bending moment than the engineers that designed it meant it to sustain. In other words, it was stronger than it was designed to be in the end. But what happens is, when an I-beam fails, it's not generally the top plate or the bottom plate that fail, it's the webbing in between. As long as that webbing stays there, the beam stays. If the webbing starts to fail, the beam collapses. The sides bowed out, and that created, I believe, a vertical crack in the plating. I got this, by the way, from other ships that sank from this reason here on the Great Lakes a year later. A vertical crack. Now, Titanic up to that point is listing the port. Once that happens, the ship will always, but it has obtained a stability. That is, it's not going to roll any further. It's going to sink, but it's stable. It's hard to imagine, but go with me for a minute. Well, if that opens up on the port side, ships will lean or list toward the side of the damage. So the bow damage that's no longer a factor in the sinking. But if this opens up back here, it's going to do this. And that's going to start it to roll this way. And what we find is Titanic, in fact, is in a death roll to port when it breaks up.
Here's a question.
I'll get to it. I haven't forgotten.
I was watching another documentary, and somebody asked a question, and before anybody could answer, they clicked off the commercial. Anyway, they said, what would have happened if they would have put Titanic in reverse? I mean, after it hit and they were stopped, and if they just would have backed up.
Or continued to go forward.
If they'd gone forward, they would have created more problems. If they had gone in reverse, well, okay, no, I gotta stop here. First of all, Lightoller learned that lesson. He ran over a submarine during World War I, busted the bow of his boat all to hell. It was sinking. He backed into port. Okay, take that for what it is. But remember, and never forget this, history does not reveal its alternatives. We know what happened, but we can't know what might have happened. Remember that, yes?
I read this one book, it's another myth book, and one of the common myths about why it sunk was that if the guy, watchman, had forgot his binoculars, he would have been able to.
Binoculars. Again, landsmen think, no, binoculars, that's how you keep looking. No, can't see a damn thing at night through binoculars. Even modern binoculars, the British binoculars at the time were particularly bad. The Germans had invented night-coated binoculars, and they, modern coatings. It was a military secret at that time. So the British didn't have it. They had what were effectively big opera glasses. But you don't use binoculars to look out. Look out, you scan, and at night, you scan by not looking with the center of your eye, but you either looking up, it depends on who you are. Some guys do this, some guys do this. But you'll never see anything dead center in your vision at night, because your vision isn't meant to do that. The color vision is very poor. But curiously enough, we only have color vision in a very narrow area. Your brain creates the colors outside of that, but that's not really there. That's the rods and cones thing. And the black and white out here is very sensitive to light. So you'll see things in your peripheral vision you'll never see. And I've done this. You see something and you look over there, you can't stop yourself, and it disappears. So then you look back and you see it, and then you gotta train yourself to do that. Yeah.
I don't know if this has any bearing, and I wasn't in the war or anything, but I was in basic training, and we went out for night, go out and
Yeah.
shoot at night, and they said, and like a Jeep would come, they said, don't look at the Jeep, because if you look at the headlight, it destroys your night vision. And I'm just thinking in my mind's eye, the ship has got all these lights on it.
Well, it was designed so that it wouldn't have light forward this way. They were special.
But if you're a lookout and you glance at light, doesn't that destroy your
Oh, yeah.
night vision?
Yeah, these guys would not have been looking down at the deck at girls in white dresses. I love it. She's got a white dress on and she goes through a boiler room. You know what a boiler room was like in those days?
I mean, that destroyed your night vision for quite a while.
Oh, it would, yeah. And that's one of the reasons, at 70, I decided it's time. I don't want to be like Captain Smith and take one voyage too many.
Can I just ask,
Yeah.
I mean, just in simple, I didn't listen to all these documentaries, but as I understand the events, 22 knots now, that's not fast, right?
It's just a little faster than, you get a ticket in the school zone, but it's
So-
not real fast.
2.2 miles ahead, the watch guy sees a black mass, rings 3 times, so that means it's dead ahead. And the captain decides, instead of slowing down and letting the thing, it's in like the current, right? So it's gonna, 2.5 miles, isn't it?
No,
If you
no.
slow down, look
Okay,
at past in front of you.
another myth. At sea is not on the car. You're driving down a highway. You got curbs, you got ditches, who knows what. You can only go where it's paved. Brake is your friend,
Yeah.
under some circumstances. Okay, slow. At sea, what you got is a wholly different situation. If you slow down or stop, first of all, it's going to take almost 2 miles for it to do it. But secondly, you're still going to hit. Okay, you really have to understand that at sea, maneuver is your friend. It's in the rules of the road. Your first responsibility, way to get out of a close encounter situation, is maneuver. Turn, alter course, and make such alteration so that it's plainly evident to the other boat. Then, if you still are in extremis, slow. And only if there is nothing else that can be done should you stop. The Coast Guard examination for master will put a question in there where everybody who's familiar with a car would say slam on the brakes and stop, and they'll get ding, you're not a captain. Because stopping, what do you become? A stop ship is owned and known in the rules of the road as basically a target. You can't maneuver to avoid collision. So the thing is that when you see something, the best thing you can do is maneuver. Because you've got sea room. There's 450 miles of sea room to the nearest land. You know, a little alteration, of course, is safe and quick and easy. Okay? But when you get to extremists, and you got to understand, Murdoch's standing here and he knows that iceberg is out there somewhere. He can't see it. Because once they get a little closer, parallax takes it below the horizon and he can't find it anymore. It's
Well, wouldn't the
disappeared.
current,
No, it wouldn't really. And the current would be affecting the Titanic as
the
well.
current would go in the normal,
It's not
one
going that
direction.
fast.
So you're almost, if the
Over
current's
6
going,
minutes, the iceberg is still.
okay.
It's not moving that fast. It's not like the Bay of Fundy, you know. So what would happen is, you turn, and all of a sudden, Murdoch is looking 35 to 50 seconds at, the end of his career. Just that, some 35 to 50 seconds away. You're taught unofficially, you won't find this ever written down, and certainly not in a company rule book. Always point the bow at whatever you're gonna hit, because it's the strongest part of the ship.
That's right. That's right.
So that's why he wouldn't have made an emergency maneuver until he took the ice. Because he wouldn't have known if he was gonna miss it. And if so, or how hard he was gonna hit it, The iceberg was, it's just not that sort of, you can't imagine how fast and how slow time goes in this situation. And so he did things right. But you don't stop and you don't slow down. It gives you no advantage whatsoever. In a crowded waterway, you have to. Now, what's considered safe speed, by the way, is not no wake. Legally, safe speed is the speed at which you don't have an accident. It used to be the speed at which you could stop in half the distance, and then what happened was a lot of smart lawyers were saying, well, it was half the distance until something changed the visibility, and he was in my client had to, the visibility changed. Well, so we changed that. We now say, if you had an accident, you're going too fast.
My dad was the helmsman of World War II, and when they had the reunions afterwards, they said my dad was a hero. And the reason they said he was a hero was, he was coming out of Pearl Harbor, and he was an LST, and captain or somebody told him to go left, and it shouldn't have, and he sideswiped a transport. And that was coming into Pearl Harbor. So they went up in dry dock, and they missed the Battle of Iwo Jima. So they all thought my dad was the hero that saved all their lives.
We had a collision between two battleships during World War II. And I knew a guy who was on one of them. He said, "You've never heard anything like two battleships hitting." It was all hushed up because they didn't want to tell anybody,
They had what a racket that would have made.
Oh,
He said,
geez.
you can't imagine.
It would roll.
Oh, yeah.
Question about the iceberg. How long did anyone track it and whatever became of it? Is it still round?
Yeah.
Pieces of it somewhere?
Oh, no, here, I'll tell you. You made tea with some. It never goes away. Some of it evaporated. Eventually, I'm sure there must be a molecule or two in the coffee or tea. No, it melted very shortly after that, yes.
A couple of summers ago, we were down in Pigeon Forge or something, and we went to the Titanic Museum.
Oh, put your hand on the big one.
And what was interesting is they give you a card of a crew member or passenger.
That was neat.
And they had these different ramps at different points where the Titanic started listing and how difficult it would have been to move around in the boat. And and then of course they had the cold water you put your hands in. People were subject to. It was well worth the trip going through that.
All right.
It was all very interesting.
The woman that runs that, Maggie Kellogg, I've met. She doesn't like me. Because her whole exhibit would have to be rebuilt. I'm being very serious. You go to any library, you're going to find, and this is the truth, that my books get pulled quickly off the shelf. My books maybe don't get bought because why? They got 17 books that have the same
One story.
stuff, and then they get somebody who's different. And I know what they say. Oh, we got too many Titanic books. Well, this doesn't fit. There's a very strong, I gotta tell you, we are very well educated today, but we have very little wisdom. Too much fact and too little wisdom to put into it. I didn't bring any books to sell. This is deliberate. I don't make any money on any of the big publisher books, Last Log of the Titanic or My White Hurricane. I got to tell you, it's a bloody war out there between the publishers and the writers. And the writers are taking it in the year. I could say worse. I could use sailor talk. But
Nautical talk.
yeah. But is anybody a sailor here? A true sailor? Wind bagger?
We have a 27 CNC.
Do you know how to get a dead rat out of the lee scupper?
You got me on that
You just come about.
one. Oh,
See, I know he's a sailor because he groaned. If you come about, the dead rat hasn't moved, but he's now in the weather scupper. By definition. Okay, I do have another book out called The Titanic Myths, Titanic Truths. It's available only through Amazon if you care to buy one. And if you do, and you want to look me up, I will be more than glad to sign any of them. But the reason I don't have Titanic Myths, Titanic Truths is I'm an old guy and I forgot until last week and I couldn't get them soon enough. But I do have, at least I'm brutally honest. I have cards here, and if you are, there, it's got the stuff I've done on the back and me on the front, you can get a hold of me. And if you want to tell me to go to hell, that's fine, but I think we've all sat long enough. Let's, if you want to refresh, and then and anybody has questions, I'll answer them.
And Mr. Brown will be back on Monday, May 19th at 6:30 to discuss the book White Hurricane.
Oh, there's something else, gentlemen back there. I don't want to do too much opening, but you can look, these are some, apparently, look pretty authentic to me. I'm going to be very careful with this.